and that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
It's all about action. Not fun. Yeah. So it's funny that oh no, that's not good. He's back. Oh, is this another angle? Oh, never saw the other angle before.
Backside, strong side.
Oh, there it goes. Commentary makes it though. Yeah. From an understanding standpoint, it's phenomenal. So we are. I'm excited. So something very, very fun is happening. The Rookie Camp. We do. So first of all, what I'd like to do is, if there's anyone here for the first time, please stand up. No, for the first Saturday. She's like, this guy want to stand up. So welcome. If anyone passed a test in the last week or so, if you could please stand up and we could give some recognition for. What? So congratulations. That's a very, very big deal. So we're actually going to have Gino and Jenny and Claudia and Mondo, and they're going to go with Sue, and they're going to actually go to the first week of Rookie Camp. We're going to start trying to get it. So if you guys wouldn't mind following us as well, that would be incredibly helpful. Go to Rookie Camp. They're like, what's Rookie Camp? You'll know when you're done with week 1 of Rookie Camp. You can learn to dance like that guy.
You can keep your shirt on. Thank you.
That should be the intro to Rookie Camp. That dancing camp.
Right?
Fun. It's amazing.
That should be the intro. That's good. So what did you guys get?
And every dancing person, every leader needs a follower to become a leader.
So anything else? Because it's interesting, right? When we first started on, it's easy to, everyone was kind of giggling and laughing and kind of going, oh, this is kind of cute. It's amazing the opportunities to learn, right? The things in our life, over the last couple days, has been interesting. We've used some really unique experiences to use teaching, right, through that principle. So that's one of my favorite things. Y'all excited?
Yeah.
It's weird that it's the 6 of y'all. Like that we don't have more, and at the same time, it's kind of interesting, like in terms of what's going on. So one of the things that I wanted to do is spend a little bit of time. We're at a place where growth is now in front of us. There's a lot of really cool things. So I'm going to ask my friend David and my friend Tony to come up here for you guys. And my goal is we coach our captains, right? And all of us all of us are captains in this thing. All of us are, like, this is, so it's kind of fun that this will be, now this is being broadcast, so just so you guys know, so this will be, this stuff. But you two had an interesting last couple days. And so I'd like for you guys to just share whatever it is you want to share about each of your individual interactions, and then I'll help facilitate if there's things that I think we need to express as well. So Tony, why don't you start being that yours was first? You can set the stage as to what your interaction was. Dave, if you feel like you want to interject with any of it because you were there, then you're fine with that. So we've got about 12 to 15 minutes on this, right? So wherever we want to go.
So this week I've been engaging a lot of my studies with Series 6, and there's something that I brought up to Brett after taking the test. He asked me what I got. I told him the percentage. I got 70, and he asked, well, why? He's like, well, that we expected. I'm like, well, I was waiting for 75, 80, due to the studies that I was focusing on. But and I told him that there's some information that I did not come across the Kaplan, so I went to Investopedia and other resources that can give me information. And so Brad brought up some information. It's like, so Kaplan wrote test questions and did not provide the information on the manual. And I agreed with that. I made myself believe that that was actually fact. And I did not see that. Maybe I was looking for, one, information well, and two, I wasn't leveraging people here that have already taken the test where they possibly already have found.
So here, let's go stop for a second. Storytelling is an important role. Okay, so part of this is telling stories for people to know. So you have a unique opportunity. You can tell the facts, or you can actually tell a story. Which would you prefer? Story. Okay, because the story is going to make you look bad and good. You're going to look bad in the beginning and look good at the end. You can kind of give. Which would you prefer? Okay, so here's kind of what the foundation of this was. So you got a 70, and were you excited? Were you frustrated?
A little bit of both. Excited and frustrated. Excited because I improved 7 points.
Just say you're happy.
I was happy.
Okay, so I was there. Here was the thing. I got a 70. Tony, what's going on? Well, I think I should have gotten a lot better. I mean, based on the studies I did yesterday. Does that look happy? Does that look at all happy or excited?
It's more like frustrated.
And you even said it, because this is the perfect example of you doing exactly what it is we're talking about within your own story. You're rewriting it in your own head. You came here and said, I felt like I should have gotten a 75 or 80, but I got a 70. Does that description describe excited, or does it describe frustrated? So isn't it interesting that you're describing the story frustrated and assessing it as though I was excited and, well, kind of. That's interesting, right? Because how we set our study, how we set the parameters even in our own head is really what the fundamentals of what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so you were excited because you're supposed to be, and frustrated because you thought you should have gotten better, right?
Right.
You remember the question that I asked you?
Yes.
The question
is,
was it the same material? Was there different material, or was it the same material? Okay, so the question, because what I was trying to do is, you were frustrated, and I'm trying to, do I want you frustrated? Does it serve you to be frustrated? No, so my first question was it, did you take the same test and get different, and get the questions wrong so you didn't learn, or were you exposed to new questions? And what were you?
exposed to new questions.
Okay, so then does the frustration of the studying do you any good? Isn't that interesting? If you're frustrated because you wanted to get a 75 or 80 because you did all of the studying, but the studying you did actually didn't help with the questions that you got, isn't that misaligned frustration?
Yes.
Okay, but that's not, you weren't taking yourself down that path. You were just looking at the number. Does that make sense? Which is an interesting thing for us because we have to kind of manage ourselves in this stuff, right? Well, I have to be there. So, but because you were frustrated, and then I said that and you didn't want to hear that, can you do a little bit better job of explaining what your explanation for things were? Like, when you, what was the real problem with the study and the test?
Oh, yeah. I felt that Kaplan, the manual Kaplan, didn't provide all the information that the questions had.
So I want to let that sink in for a second. Here's what he was saying. And so what was your options? What did you feel like you had to do?
Go to invest or any other reason.
Go to best community. So your answer was Kaplan didn't provide the material in the studying, so I had to go somewhere else.
For the Kaplan.
For the Kaplan written test. Now, this is important. I'm not making, but these are, how many of us build in our own landmines and we tell ourselves a story and then we're convinced that the story makes sense, right? And so part of this work was, does that sentence actually make any sense at this point in your life?
No.
This morning? No. How much did you believe it at the time?
100%.
Now the interesting thing is when you first described it, and this is recorded, when you first described it, you said, I convinced myself of that after Brett repeated it back to me, which is actually completely a lie. Because you actually were convinced because you were the one that had to be convinced because you're the one that said it. So 3 minutes ago,
That I do understand.
okay, but when you said, I didn't say that the material wasn't there, and then you're like, oh my God, I have to go to Investopedia. Who said that? You did. So who had to believe it? Okay, so I couldn't convince you of it. There's a reason for this stuff. We all do these things. And the dilemma is that we get ourselves convinced that things go certain ways, and then we own it. And that becomes our truth. And then when someone tries to coach us through it, if we don't want to release it, we get frustrated, or we minimize it, or we do a variety of things that aren't necessarily in our best interest. Does that make sense? Then over the period of time, we finally got to a place where you realize that that's not necessarily the reality, that Kaplan wouldn't.
Wouldn't write the test that doesn't provide the answer.
Like, that's an important thing to own.
Really good.
It's
Bravo,
huge.
bravo.
I'm very proud of you. Now, one would think that that was the strangest interaction of the week.
No.
Well, the whole time that I'm listening to Brett, Coach Tony, you know, I'm sitting sideline and I'm like, you know, giggling and like, oh my God, I can't believe what the hell's Tony doing. And doesn't he see it? Doesn't he understand? And I was like, why is he rationalizing it? And I'm seeing it from the other angle, and I'm trying to learn from it. And I guess you know, it's just a habit that we have. And yesterday, so I'm able to see that, right? And I was like, I could learn from that, I could apply something. And yesterday I have a coffee with a friend of mine, and I sat down with Brett before I went to go see her because I wanted to make sure that I was going to put her in the right. I wanted to make sure I was going to recruit her for the right position, right? And I sat down with Brett and I was like, what are you going to recruit for? What's it for? And I was like, well, I want her to be my advocate because she's 71 years old, she's retired, and I just wanted to recommend people to me, right? Or have a great relationship with them. And that's what we had a competition for. So he gave me an ideal conversation. So I practiced it and I went. Because I have an idea of what I wanted to have a conversation with her, I have a conversation, but instead of her, she kept telling me, you know, David, I'm retired. I don't want to do this. I'm used to a steady paycheck. I just want to travel. I want to just live my life. And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? She doesn't want to be my advocate. She said I'm not going to recommend people. Like my mind just didn't go out the way I planned. And I came back and I did for Brett. And I'm like, Brett, this is what happened. This is how it went down. But she just doesn't want to recommend people to me. I leveraged the relationship and I just talked about the relationship and blah, blah, blah. And Brett's like, so she told you she's 71. She told you she's retired. She told you this, this, and this. did you even listen to the feedback? Because I went in with the premise of, you know, I want her to just be my advocate. I just want her to be my advocate. I just want her to be my advocate. And then what I'm telling her is, I'm trying to recruit you. I'm trying to recruit you. So I couldn't, in the moment in time, I couldn't know. You know, I was confused, and we sat down, and I had a moment that was very similar to. I made Brett feel like he was in an eerie little. Like an eerie place where we're just like, oh my God, I just had this conversation with Tony yesterday, and guess what, David? You were there, because I was trying to rationalize it away and just never really realized what I was looking into, the feedback part. So I'm so confused in the moment, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, and then he's like, did it work? And then Brett's amazing at showing you how to realize, remember Tony, you were there. This is the same thing, and I'm still more confused than Tony in the moment, in the time. So I'm just like, how do I learn? How do I get that? I'm like, I'm looking at Tony's experience and I'm measuring that, right? And I'm like, I want to find this hole. What is it? Why did I create a different? Why did I think that way? Why did I think that I was trying to? She was an advocate. Why was I thinking that way? So I was trying to find and fix that. It just turns the code in my mind of like just fixing it. So I go back to Tony and I'm like, I'm gonna go tell Tony. And I'm like, I'm gonna go tell him and I'm gonna explain to him how we were pretty much alike and how we're not learning in our freaking hole, you know, like me and you have this problem and we gotta fix it together. And I'm trying to tell him, and then I go back to Tony and I tell Tony, this is what I should have said to the lady. And I start rationalizing to Tony what I should have said to let him think that I'm just giving him the facts. You know, I'm just giving him, and for me, I was like, I'll worry about it later. Like in the sense of my mind, like I'll fix it in my mind.
So I'm gonna stop for a second because you're doing good.
Yeah.
So here's where the dilemma was. The dilemma was that David he was expressing, she told me, David, I'm 71 years old. Said, I'm retired. So though there's no way that those feedback sentences come if the sentence is, I don't want to give referrals. Right? If you've ever met someone who doesn't want to give referrals, it's, you know, I've done this before, someone's gotten screwed, right? People have taken advantage. They give rationalizations as to why they're not giving recommendations. So if the ask is, and David's creating an environment where the ask is become an advocate, and there's resistance, you're going to get resistance based on the ask. Does that make sense? So when we talk about look for feedback, in that moment, David didn't realize that he was actually using language to recruit her. He was convinced that he was talking to her about being an advocate. They convinced, they argumented, as convinced as Kaplan didn't have the stuff in the material. It was exactly the same depth of, no, Brett, I had the exact like, I was talking to her about being an advocate. But the responses weren't in alignment of that's what the messaging was. Does that make sense? And that's where the disconnect is that if we're going to actually use feedback as an indicator, we actually have to be open to that feedback.
Yes.
There's no way that Kaplan would write a test question and not have the study material in the materials. But if Tony couldn't find it, he had one of two choices. Either say, it's not there, or I'm not understanding what I'm studying and I can't figure out what it's actually asking. Those are the two choices that Tony had to make. Instead of saying, I'm not understanding something, so I'm not finding it, I have to own my culpability, my lack in this, so that I can actually ask for the right help or I can change. I have to acknowledge that what I'm doing isn't from the place I want to. Instead, I can blame Kaplan. Does that make sense? David going, no, I'm asking the right questions. I'm giving the right presentation. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And her feedback isn't going, so I'm just going to jam her feedback into fitting into what I'm actually saying. They're exactly the same situation. David not going, you know what, I might have completely not even said what I thought I was saying. Because there's no way she was receiving that when she's like, I'm used to a steady paycheck, I'm retired, all I want to do is travel, I've already done. That's not a recommendation resistance response. that make sense? And so part of this, the reason we're having this conversation is we're now starting to move forward. We're going to start finding our holes. We have to take feedback and identify it, digest it, synthesize it, right? We have to use it as an indicator. Going the way you want to, one of the best things that I can recommend is understand you probably created it. Not from a, I suck, but from a, what did I say to get this? Because this was not the response that I anticipated, right? And it's not that, like, this is an opportunity to grow, and both of them had a unique opportunity to see the other one kind of struggle with it. Tony, what did you learn from David about that he did a little bit different than you, that you have an opportunity to grow?
So when Brett was telling me that, when Brett was pointing out how intense I was with myself and guys, the captain, the whole time he was coaching me, I shut off. Like, all I would say is, like, yeah, I understand. I wasn't giving feedback. I wasn't giving feedback as what he was telling me, nor was I seeking more correction, help me with my thinking and get over that hole. I got frustrated. I just shut down.
Then you were mad at her for like 2 days.
25 hours to be exact.
Until David screwed up.
Steam.
Then it felt better.
Until I screwed up and then he fucked it.
But when David came back to the office, he went to Brett, got that feedback, came to the office, and we talked about it. And he realized he was doing the same thing as I was, rationalizing the way. Well, David went to Brett's office 3 times to get over that. So that's the difference between, in that moment, David was more coachable. He took the opportunity and wanted to learn, and that's what I learned, how to model that. How not to get in my own head and be like, you know what, screw it, I want to learn. He took advantage of it, and he grew that much more.
Great. Thank you guys for sharing. So, we're now going to watch another video.
Yes.
And it'll make you feel better. Potentially.
I just have the shirt on.
Every day. You've heard people say it's just like riding a bike, meaning it's really easy and you can't forget how to do it, right? But I did something. I did something that damaged my mind. It happened on the streets of Amsterdam, and I got really scared, honestly. I can't ride a bike like you can anymore. Before I show you the video of what happened, I need to tell you the backstory. Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill, and I was really proud of it. Everything changed, though, when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses, and they like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle, and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike, ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Justin Sandlin. First attempt riding the bicycle.
So that's where I go to that.
I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. Therefore, knowledge is not understanding. Look, I know what you're probably thinking. Destin's probably just an uncoordinated engineer and can't do it. But that's not the case at all. The algorithm that's associated with riding a bike in your brain is just that complicated. Think about it. Downwards force on the pedals, leaning your whole body, pulling and pushing the handlebars, gyroscopic precession in the wheels. Every single force is part of this algorithm. And if you change any one part, it affects the entire control system. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences, and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this. For instance, this guy, I offered him $200 just to ride this bike 10 feet across the stage. Everybody thought he could do it. No, you didn't understand. You didn't understand. So, this way.
Whenever you're ready. No, you have to keep your feet on. Let's see if we got this. Like you guys start rolling at least. Go. Keep your feet on the pedal. Go. Go. Keep your feet on the pedal. Careful. Yeah, come on. One more time.
Once you have a rigid way of thinking in your head, sometimes you cannot change that, even if you want to. So here's what I did. It was a personal challenge. I stayed up.
Oh, jeez. Hold on. We lost power.
But after 8 months, this happened. One day I couldn't ride the bike, and the next day I could. It was like I could feel some kind of pathway in my brain that was now unlocked. It was really weird, though. It's like there's this trail in my brain, but if I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, my brain would easily lose that neural path and jump back onto the old road it was more familiar with. Any small distractions at all, like a cell phone ringing in my pocket, would instantly throw my brain back to the old control algorithm and I would wreck, but at least I could ride it. My son is the closest person to me genetically, and he's been riding a normal bike for 3 years. That's over half his life. I wanted to know how long it would take him to learn how to ride a backwards bike, so I told him if he learned how to ride a backwards bike, he could go with me to Australia and meet a real astronaut. Are you going to give up?
Go ahead. This is how it starts. Look at this. This is such a big deal. Get up. You got it. Did you see his brain get it? So he, in how many weeks have we been doing this? 2 weeks? In 2 weeks, he did something that took me 8 months to do, which demonstrates that a child has more neuroplasticity. Am I even saying that right?
It's clear from this experiment that children have a much more plastic brain than adults. That's why the best time to learn a language is when you're a young child.
All right, today's bike log. I can ride smooth, I can ride fast. I'm thinking the experiment is over. Okay, now I'm in Amsterdam, a city that has more bicycles than people. The question is, can I ride a normal bike now? I mean, I've spent all this time unlearning how to ride a bike. If I go back and try to ride a normal one, will my brain mess up? So I've tweeted a Smarter Everyday meetup, if you will, and I'm going to see if somebody brings a bicycle, and I'm going to try to ride a normal bike. It's backwards.
This was one of the most frustrating moments of my life. I had ridden a normal bike since I was 6, but in this moment, I couldn't do it anymore. I had set out to prove that I could free my brain from a cognitive bias. But at this point, I'm pretty sure that all I proved is that I can only redesignate that bias.
So what you're not seeing is just a group of people here looking at me, looking at the strange American that can't ride a bike because they think I'm dumb. But I'm actually 2 levels deep into this because I've learned and unlearned.
After 20 minutes of making a fool out of myself, suddenly my brain clicked back into the old algorithm. I can't explain it, but it happened in a very specific moment.
I got it. I'm back. Oh, click. Hold it, click. I got it. Okay, there it is. There's my moment. Okay, I can ride a bike.
I tried to explain this to people around me, and they just didn't get it. They thought I was faking the previous 20 minutes, and I couldn't get anybody to believe me.
That looked like I faked that, didn't it?
Yeah.
Just a fake. I'm faking. You don't prove it. You think I'm lying, don't you? I'm not lying.
I felt like the only person on the planet who had ever unlearned how to ride a bike, and I couldn't articulate it to anyone because everybody just knew that you can't forget how to ride a bike. So I learned 3 things from this experiment. I learned that welders are often smarter than engineers. I learned that knowledge does not equal understanding. And I learned that truth is truth, no matter what I think about it. So be very careful how you interpret things, because you're looking at the world with a bias, whether you think you are or not. I'm Destin. I'm getting smarter every day. Have a good day.
So, when we talk about things, so yesterday when I had the conversation with you guys, it's easy to get it's easy to get a bit frustrated. It's easy to go in those moments to feel very alone, to feel like it's so obvious, because it's so obvious to someone who gets it, and it's incredibly challenging to not. And part of what we want to do is to create a space for growth, for opportunities to develop, for that process. This isn't, right? We always talk about this. Coachability isn't about intellect. It's about, if I've climbed a mountain before, I know where the shortcuts are. I know where the alligators are. Right? If I got a walkie-talkie, you're at the bottom of the hill, and I'm at the top of the hill, and I go, if you turn right, there's an alligator. I'm not smarter than you. I've already slayed, I've gone down that road. And so part of this is, where's your resistances? What are the pieces? If you operate, look, Jim Rohn said something a really long time ago to me on a tape.
Jim Rohn's off.
If you were worth $1 million, you know what you'd be paying? $1 million to the marketplace. If you were worth $10 million to the marketplace, you know what you'd be paying? $10 million. If you're not getting paid $10 million, you're not worth $10 million to the marketplace yet. That's not a valuable son or daughter or husband or wife or child, but to the marketplace, your value is quantifiable. Pick a number of what you like. I don't care if it's $5,000 a month of passive income. To be able to create an income stream of $5,000 a month of passive income, there are skills and resources and opportunities and mastery that needs to be in place. If you want to make $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, or $500,000 a year, or $1 million a year, there are skills that need to be mastered that you probably don't have right this second. That is not an indictment on your character. You learn to ride a bike a certain way. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you might need to learn a new pathway. That's what we have an opportunity to do. That's the fight that we're in. And the good news is that we all together can accomplish it, and we've done a lot of the things that we're talking about doing. So there's all sorts of awesome things in front of us. So the last little thing I wanted to be able to do, just to be able to give some recognition, the awesome Wade Stolsky is principal. Now the opportunity to be RVP is loaded.
Get it. Hi, everybody. All around. Switch gears a little bit. We chat. Okay. You guys up for some chat, right? Forwards. Oh, how's everyone doing this morning? Good. Good. So, lots been happening, right? A lot of big things. A lot of interesting realizations, moments, and for everybody. I was thinking about the conversation that Brett had with you when you went on that appointment. And I was thinking about it from a little bit of a different angle. And just remind me one more time, because I was over there. When you came back here, what did you tell Brett that she said? What was her name?
Her name is
Susan? And how do you know Susan?
Met her at Best Buy.
You met her at Best Buy. And about how long did And what did you tell Brett? She said when you got back in?
That she was not going to recommend.
She wasn't going to recommend it. I think there were three things, right? That she was.
Oh, that she's retired. I mean, that she wants to travel.
She wants to travel.
She's 71 years old, and she's not
71 years old.
anything.
And she's what?
She's not interested into
Anything.
and that she wants to travel, and her parents gave her a lot of money.
Right, and she's not going to recommend you. Anyway.
We're not convinced that that sentence was actually said.
So this is what you told Brett.
Yes.
Yes. How connected did you feel to her in your conversation?
Not
So where does she want to travel to?
I mean, California. She likes horses, but she does a lot of trails. So she like travel on horses.
Did she tell you exactly where she wants to travel?
Yeah, just
Let me rephrase that. Did you ask her where she wants to travel?
No.
Did you ask her who she wants to travel with?
No.
Did you ask her about maybe anything else she might be interested in her life?
Modern horses.
So that's interesting. That was interesting to me when I thought about it.
And we talked past experiences. So like just things that, because I focused on, oh my gosh, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong. Because what I thought she said, right, where I took it as, oh my gosh, I don't find anything. So she says, I'm not interested in this part. I'm happy for you that you're venturing on to do something like this. And I focused on just relationship. And I could only think of, oh, do you remember your neighbor? Do you remember the situations that I helped her with, right? Like, I just started bringing up why we're still friends and why we're still here together and what's your interest and how are your horses, stuff like that.
So you switched the conversation.
I switched the conversation to about what's happening in her life now and what happened.
And how long were you there for total? How long was the conversation? An hour. And what point, about how far into the conversation did she say, I'm not interested and I'm not?
About
Halfway through. And what did you talk about leading up to that moment?
on like a trip that she was supposed to go on, and that went through it. And she just said she didn't go through it. Some things happened to her. So it was just fast report on what.
And what else? Something else you talked about for her to say to you, I'm not interested and I'm not recommending it.
When she asked me, what are you working on? How's it going? How's the business? How is it that, how is your business going? What's happened? And then I shared with her, so it was funny that in the beginning of the year when you saw me and I was leaving Best Buy, and then I told you that I was going to be venturing up into financial wellness, and talked to her about, what financial wellness are, and I told her, hey, so when an idea comes into, when the group that I'm with had an idea, now that we actually landed some accounts, and we can measure a small account to a large account, and she's like, and now I have, a large account that has 300 employees, and I need amazing, and I have an amazing crisis. That's what I went into. And so I was like, I have an amazing crisis. But as that was going, she was saying, oh man, that's amazing. I can't believe your idea is it's falling into place and things are happening for you. I'm happy for you. And she was more like, attaboy, that's happy, woo, celebrating my win, and then when I went into, she's celebrating my win, oh my gosh, she's happy for me. Let me explain what I'm struggling with, which was I need people. And then I shared with her, like, listen, I need smart, dedicated people to come into my life, because when I share this to my friends and family, they don't understand that what I'm trying to do and accomplish. And it's not that they don't care. So it was just that type of conversation, and to the point where she was like, well, I'm 71 and I'm retired, and then that's what she said. I'm 71 and retired, and I'm just trying to live life. And that was what pivoted for her, and I didn't realize in the moment that oh my God, I'm saying I need people and I need this and I need that, and she's like, well, I'm not gonna help you because I'm done. She's 71 and she's like, I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What was your goal going into the meeting?
To recruit her as an active advocate.
Recruiter. Yeah.
Not just an advocate.
That's interesting.
And I think that's what she did. She didn't want to be active.
So I had a similar experience to you last week at OSNA. And I think that you had this experience and I've had this experience, and so I'm going to venture to say that many of us potentially have had a similar experience. And it was funny because the other day you talked about how aligned Brett and I often are.
Right.
And this morning, Brett said something that I'm going to share with you about what we're going to talk about in the meeting today. And I was sitting and thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, and I thought, oh, wow, the universe acts in really mysterious ways. So Oz night, I walked away from Oz night and I was like, something isn't feeling right to me about Oz night. The presentation, a wonderful friend of my life who is a life coach. And I was talking to her, and suddenly the word connection came up for me. And what I realized is that in a lot of the conversation that we've been having, we talk about what an amazing opportunity we have for everybody else. And how everybody should get on board with our amazing opportunity because it's so effing amazing. Whether you're on board as an ally, an advocate, or an associate, how would you not want to be in our amazing opportunity? There's clearly something wrong with you if you don't want our amazing opportunity. Right? Which is interesting because it has a Sandlot tweak to it, doesn't it? How could you not? Don't you love your family? Well, if we're not careful, Oz and Access can take on that same quality. Because it's such an amazing opportunity! It's only amazing if it's amazing for that person. And we all know that starts with connection. You feeling it, huh, Tom? I know, right? It starts with that connection. And I have felt I didn't know I was feeling disconnected. And I think the most amazing, wonderful thing about this realization was twofold. One, we actually have a set of skills for being aware of having conversations that start with connection. What's that called in this room? Remember this one? We haven't brought it up for a while. We call it SICK. Remember that in every conversation? SICK. C-C-I-I, right? C-C-I-I-I-C, right? And it starts with
two C's, two I's, then a C.
Two I's and a C. And we've constantly been looking for a better acronym, but that's what we started with. It's in there. It's in there.
That's on the original.
Right?
That was on the back of the original.
It is. I mean, and it is. I actually just had it. It is. And it starts with connection. And it was a reminder, one, that it starts with connection. Now, what's really interesting, I had lunch with on Saturday is a life coach. And in coaching, we use a word that I would like to introduce to all of you. Now, look, this is going to be a little bit of a newer conversation. So I'm going to ask you to give me some leeway. Like, I'm going to work through this with you guys. And this will be another sort of part of our skill set. And the word that I want to introduce to you is enroll and enrollment. In coaching, we talk about enrollment. And my favorite definition of enrollment is the art and skill of engaging and inspiring someone in a possibility of their life. The art and skill of engaging and inspiring someone in the possibility of their life.
This is what I went through, and I went so defensive that I was trying to find moments in our experience of life to reconnect. So I had to bring up old stuff to reconnect.
And I'm proud of you for going there to begin with. Now we get to look at it and say, okay, what skills can we increase so that in that moment, I can see where I am, dial back, and reconnect in that authentic place that we're in that moment. And that's what we'll move forward in the next half hour. Yes?
This also gives connection and finding their
Yes, this is part of enrolling, right? In their possibility. And really, it's funny, and the conversation I had on Friday was, enrollment is a word that's used in coaching to enroll people in their own possibility to enroll people in their own engagement and their coaching. But the truth is, everything we do every day is about enrollment. We are enrolling people into our cause. We are enrolling people into a project. We are enrolling people into our teaching. We are enrolling people, all our kids, into their growth. All day long, we are enrolling people. And enrollment doesn't start with us. It starts with them. It's about their possibility. It starts with them. So would you guys be open to talking a little bit more about the skill of enrollment? Is that something you'd be interested in and we could talk through and we can work through? Cool. And the really fabulous part about all this is it's another skill. It's actually a skill that can be learned, mastered, and taught. Enrolling is a skill. And Brett talked to me this morning when we were planning the meeting, and he wrote down this. WIFM. And WIFM stands for What's in It for Me. And I believe you talked a little bit about this with David and Bella yesterday. Yeah. Now, what's interesting when we say what's in it for me is what does our brain actually hear? Who is the focus of what's in it for me? Me. But where does the focus actually need to be on? Them. So Brett talked about it as in you want them to be thinking what's in it for me, but you have to be careful of your subconscious, because if you use what's in it for me, even though you want to believe you're talking about them, your brain hears me. And so enrolling says, what's in it for you? What's in it for them? What's in it for that other person that you're enrolling into possibility? And so the focus of the what's in it for me is, because we love acronyms, all. It is all about them. And all stands for ask. It has to start with asking questions. It's impossible to come from what's in it for them if you don't actually know what's important to them and their possibilities. For us to enroll people in what we're doing as an ally, as an advocate, or as an associate, it has to start with asking questions about them. The second skill is listen. If the whole time they're talking back, you're worried about how am I going to get them to introduce me to more people, you will miss the opportunity to enroll them. So the first thing is to ask the questions. The second part is you actually need to listen to the answers. And it's really critical to listen to the answers because the last part is link. And this is where you get to link what's important to them, what's in it for them, what their possibility is with what we're doing, with our cause, with our impact. So the what's in it for me conversation, the what's in it for me exercise, the what's in it for me perspective is all about them. listen, and link. Ask the questions. Ask what's important to them. Ask what they actually care about right now. Listen to the answer. Now here's the most beautiful part of listening to the answer. Are you ready for this? This is the big one. If you listen for the answer, the link will reveal itself. You don't have to actively search for the link. It's not about making the link. Because if you're looking to make the link, you're fitting the link into your own agenda. If you listen, and now I'm giving you the reason to really listen, the link will reveal itself. And if it hasn't revealed itself, then you have more questions to ask. And you have more listening to do. Because when that link reveals itself, you will be in the strongest position to enroll them in the possibility of their life. Who does not want to be enrolled in the possibility of their life? Right? We are about enrolling people in the possibility, inspiring and engaging in a possibility in their life. And that possibility might just be being a support for us. Hearing more, hearing about our own growth. Being a place where we can share growth. That possibility can take on all kinds of forms. It's about them. It's about where all of what we have to offer fits for them. Because when it is meaningful to them, they will show up.
Tony's breathing.
No, just everybody's out of myself.
And there's no messing up, right? You can
No,
go
it's
back.
right.
And the really beautiful thing about enrollment, and we're going to work on enrollment in here, it is a skill. It is not something you're born with. It's a skill. We get to learn. We get to master. I'm going to bring Wendy in here. And Wendy's going to talk to us about enrollment in the coaching environment because she's an expert at enrollment. And that is what we are. That is what the way that my husband recruits. When he says he's a professional recruiter, he's a professional enroller. He enrolled you in the possibility of your life, right? He enrolled you in the possibility of your life. I know that he enrolled each of you in the possibility of your lives. That's why you all keep coming back. That's what our ultimate goal is. To inspire and engage in a possibility in their lives. And we are going to do it by becoming as expert at all as we are at getting one. At asking and listening and linking. Letting that link reveal itself. Because we are always enrolling. It's about them. It's about their agenda. It's about their possibility. Yeah.
You said we did it by inspiring, and then there was a second word.
Engaging. Inspiring and engaging in their possibility. I know Wade's been doing it. Now, the fun part of what all does for Wade is it gives Wade language to what he's doing, and with that language, he can teach it. The reason I know Wade's doing it is because we went to a restaurant where we saw one of Wade's associates, recruits, and he made a comment to me and to Brett that made it very clear that he is enrolled in his own possibility in what our opportunity has to offer.
What was that?
Justin,
Oh, what did I talk about? His boat?
restaurant.
No, just talk about his boat.
No, but he talked about the vehicle to get to. Mhm. So some of us, all of us at times have done this naturally, right? When we get to put language to it, we get to make sure we're doing it more on purpose.
When you say engaging, when you're engaging someone, do you mean that you're engaging them how? Like, I know I see the inspire, like I'm doing it, like my results are inspiring, or worse, you could be inspiring, blah, but engaging meaning just having a conversation with them, or
So
in a relationship with them, or?
good question. So for me, inspiration is a feeling and engaging is an action. So when Justin starts talking to you about, and I want to get this boat, and I see that this vision for the restaurant, and yeah, we can bring all the restaurant people together, and I can see that I could be a year from getting that boat, or that boat is really important to me, and I've been looking for what the opportunity is to get to that boat. When they're actually engaging in the process, for me, inspiration is a feeling, and engaging is the participation, the participation.
But when you say that you're engaging them to enroll them, you're engaging them through giving them actions.
I'm engaging them through my conversation. Yes. Yeah. Well, but enrolling is the art of bringing them into that conversation, engaging them in, inspiring them in.
The enrollment part is when you got basically. And, but it's the inspiring and the engaging, those two, it's the vision and the engaging is the action.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because the enroller is the vehicle, right, essentially?
It's
the gateway to the space. Yep. And as the enroller, we get to hold that space for them.
I'm sorry. I don't know how this engaging. So can you, I guess give me an example.
Let me give you an example right now. So I enrolled you in learning about enrollment this morning. The first thing I did was make sure that I connected with David. And I looked at each of you and you were nodding your heads like, I'm getting it, right? Tony was like, oh yeah, I'm getting it, right? So the first thing was me connecting, right? And then I started asking the questions of David so that David started seeing the possibility of where he hadn't, right? What was going on for David in this conversation? The engaging part is simply the participation part of enrollment.
So that would be, okay, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say that you cast a vision to us about why enrollment is important. You say, hey, we had this problem, maybe it's not working the way we wanted to. There's a new way to think about it, which is enrollment, which can get us in terms of better to scale if we learn what we want. So now that's the vision. Agree with that vision. And the engagement part is, all right, let's start talking about it. Here's some of the tools, and then if they participate in the engagement, then they're moving farther along in the enrollment process, basically. So
right.
The vision gets them to, oh, I'd like to learn more. You engage them. Well, here's some of the tools and languages we can use. They engage those tools and languages and moves them along, and then that's what they do.
Right. And then my next level would be to get specific, right? So now,
What is it specifically?
Let's talk about, yeah, exactly. And I think that I'll get better at providing the language to each of these parts. A lot of this is coming up for me now, and I think that there's a lot of room for honing it in, getting better at it, cleaning it up. And I think the big takeaway this morning is the realization that in the excitement of what's happening, in the possibility that we all see, recognizing that just because we see possibility doesn't mean that the person we're talking to is going to see the possibility the same way we see it. And I think we have inadvertently been coming from that assumption possibly in certain situations, so that what we now have an opportunity to do is get back to connection, get back to asking questions and listening, and get back to looking at how does the possibility that we all see link to the possibility that's important to the person that we're talking to. Because that's how we get people to us night. That's how we get people enrolled in what we're doing, whether it's as an ally, an advocate, or an associate. So that's the big takeaway. And so if all we just start doing is asking, listening, and linking, Brett and I and all of us together, right, we will clean up the language and the process so that it's very learnable, teachable, masterable, and teachable. But those are the foundational parts to enrollment.
Seems like that whole exchange,
But
so it seems like that whole exchange was enrollment and engagement. That's, you were being engaged to her to find out how that can benefit you.
and that's actually a really important point, because you've got them when you got them is when they start engaging back, right? And so looking for those links, looking for those cues, looking for the yes, they're ready for, no, they're not ready for, right? Where that real possibility is.
One of the also transitions with the what it is trio, because it's what it is the inspiring vision. What is it? Okay, and how it works.
Right. And so as this first step, because we have a little bit more time, we're going to take a look at what Brett did with Bella and David on their list to start to see in practicality, where are we actually and how we thought about this with our particular list. So Bella and David, can you come off with your lists that you worked on? Okay, awesome. So we're going to start with Bella here. So this is Bella's Oz-Night list. So she's got, so we've got the names, and right, she's got the date at the top, and she's got the temperatures, and whether she's going to meet them, and the email and the invite. This is that same piece of paper. She just made it over here. And then what she did, which is what we're going to ask all of you to do this week, and we can get together and review it, is she talked about for each person. Well, why don't you share with us? What are the different columns?
This is the them, and this is the me.
But what is written under that?
Them. What I thought was in it for them.
Okay.
But
And
after today,
it'll be interesting how that may have changed. And what's this side?
what I think is in it for them. So this is the them is how I think they're seeing it, and this is how I see them.
Okay. So why don't you give us the example with Stephanie? Okay. So let's start with what temperature is Stephanie, just to give some.
She's warm.
She's warm. And how do you know Stephanie?
She's one of my ex supervisors.
Okay, great. And what did the then mean for Stephanie?
So Stephanie reached out to me because she was newer, let's say, in the industry than I was. So she always came to me for advice. So she liked me and she trusted me. So she had gotten let go about a month ago. And she said, you know what, I'm open, by everything that, I might be able to, take advantage of. Just let me know. I said, well, I think I might have something for you, so you need to come out and take a look at it, and then we'll decide, if it's for you.
So what's in it for Stephanie?
The possibility that maybe this could be a place to find, find herself or find something that she would be interested in doing.
So Stephanie just lost her job. And Stephanie is looking for an opportunity.
Yes.
And this could be an opportunity for Stephanie. Okay. And what's the me side for Stephanie?
The me side is what I saw was, one, she trusted me, which was a big deal. I see that there is an opportunity. I know that there is an opportunity here. I didn't know if this was gonna be opportunity for her, but I didn't judge anything. I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna invite her. And if it is, it is. If it isn't, then maybe she might know somebody who does.
Okay, so since I wasn't part of this conversation, Brett, can you give us a little bit more context as to what conversation you had about what the them side and the me side of these columns were?
So,
This feels a little different.
Yeah.
Maybe.
yeah, so the only conversation was about, so when we say, so a lot of what we've been doing is, I want your support, right? So I'll tell this Mariah anecdotally and then I'll give the direction, right? So it's, I want your support. Well, people will say, yes, I will support you until they have to leave their house, right? And so what gets them to leave their house is, what are they going to get from it? What is the value that they're going to experience when they have to act in a certain behavior, right? Because we are all self-interested. At the end of the day, if supporting you gives them enough whatever they need to do it, then they'll do it, right? But Jamie came to support you. Your relationship and friendship was high enough, whether she was interested or going to get anything out of it other than just how you guys would feel about her for being here, she's going to get dressed, leave her house, and come here, right? And so what was in it for her was the sense of support to my best friend, right? But there are very few people where that is a strong enough and powerful enough thing where support is the only tool. And so the what's in it for them at this point is, when you talk about why they're coming, why are they coming? What do they get out of it? What do they think they are going to receive from being here? So what I think I was talking about is, what do you think that you said to them and what do they think is in it? Like, what was your message versus what are they coming out? When they have to tell their significant other why they're getting in the car, what is the sentence? Because that's really what the whiffle is, right? It's, you know, I do everything about the debrief after. The whiffle is about the debrief before. Which is actually probably the cleanest way to phrase it. Well, now it's that, which is like whiffles.
Whiffy. Sounds better than Wichita. What's in it for you? Whiffy.
Yeah.
No, why? What's in
What's in it for you?
Why?
Oh, you're going why?
Yeah, for you.
Whiffy.
Whiffy. Whiffy. Whiffy. Whiffy is the.
What's your whiffy?
Whiffy, you can say it.
Right.
What's the whiff?
Okay, so based on what we just talked about, if I said to Stephanie, why are you coming to Oz Night on August 30th? What would Stephanie say to you?
I'm looking for an opportunity, but so that I can possibly do part-time.
Okay. Cool. And how about Angela? What would Angela say?
Angela is a sweetheart, and all she really wanted was to get her girls here for currently going to CSUN. I'm going to take a look at the opportunity because they could possibly see the part in the future because they're students.
Got it. Very cool. So you sound pretty aligned with where you wanted them to be. Was there anyone you invited this past Wednesday who didn't show up?
Yeah.
Who?
None of them. None of them showed up.
So is that interesting to anybody here?
Yes.
Because what I'm hearing that they were coming for sounds like that would be pretty important to them.
Yes.
But they didn't show up. So what would be the disconnect?
David, do you have an explanation?
Why, David? Why do you think?
Tony, do you have an explanation?
Yes, the disconnection is they might just be thinking they're going to come to support you.
Your thinking is when it comes to support, they're thinking something else. So the way you came across the message is recruiting. So they think they're going to be pressured to do something versus either.
No, because both of these girls, Stephanie personally called me and said, hey, you know, if you know of anything, let me know. And Angela has a daughter, so when the son, what am I in business of?
So what do you think, Ray?
Well, I was just thinking about that video that Brett showed with the bike, right? We're talking to them like with David's conversation with how he was talking to her and to that lady, the 71-year-old lady, whose name was Susan. Susan. He's talking to Susan one way, but he's trying to recruit her and she's receiving him a different way, right? So we're talking to them as if, hey, you're gonna come ride this backwards bike, and they're receiving it as, or they're listening as, but I ride the bike the normal way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is we have to learn how to with them, and the with-e or with-to is we have to understand, we have to talk to them like, hey, they're riding the bike the normal way, so I have to make sure they understand it's good for them. They're gonna have to, until we flip it, and then you got them when you got them, right? It's a little esoteric, but the idea is we have to meet them where they are to get them to hear us, so that then they can start to think the way that we think. But we have to know that nobody thinks the way that we think, because we're all riding the backwards bike. And so we have to flip them, but we can't flip them if we assume that they know how to ride the backwards bike.
Bella, is there a possibility that what they heard you say and what you think you said are not the same thing?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's this connection.
Right.
When David introduced that, I'm going to tell you, like, your initial reaction was pretty defensive in that and explaining, no, this and this.
Yeah.
And so part of this possibility, and again, it might be like one of them they started school, there's explanations. So all of us want to be very careful of, well, I did it this way for this one and getting the validation on the one. It's the broader principle of, is there, especially while we're learning this, because this is all new and none of us are experts at this right now, is there a possibility of what we think is happening and what is happening aren't actually the same thing?
Yes.
Yeah, and it makes sense now that I've heard the way you say it. I'm like,
Well, and what's important is that we look at the signs.
yeah.
So evidence that there might be a disconnect is someone not showing up to OSME.
Nobody.
Right, so when
Well, and
someone
nobody
says-
is more than any one, right? The accumulation of it is.
That's evidence, right? Because if you come up and you're like, I got a call, she said, I'm looking for a possibility. I said, here's a possibility for you. She said, that sounds great. I said, why don't you come here about on Wednesday? She said, that sounds great. And she didn't show up.
¿Qué pasó?
I took a test and I got it wrong. And the company that made the test and made the manual gave me two different things. Right? These are those moments where you're like, I need to look at the sign. Right? You standing up here, I've got two girls, they're in school, I'm looking for somebody great that's part-time. Wow, that sounds amazing. I'll beat it, and I'm not there.
The really interesting thing of what you just said that I just realized is we're actually talking about, we think we're talking about two different things, but it's the same thing. We're talking about when we're speaking to another person and they're not hearing what we say, but you're also talking about when we speak to ourselves. So when Tony is, or when David or myself every day, I'm speaking to myself in a certain way, but my results aren't getting what I want, but I'm actually speaking to myself incorrectly to get what I want, as well as when I'm speaking to other people to get what I want. So we have to know, we have to be dialed in about what the hell we're saying. Because if we are getting it wrong with ourselves, we're never going to get it right with anybody else.
For 20 years, I've been trying to have this meeting.
And that's where the coaching comes in. Because if we are talking that to ourselves, it is unlikely we'll be able to correct ourselves, to catch it ourselves, to hear it ourselves.
But how amazing is it that we are?
Right? This is why. And it might be, now here's another possibility, right? Because this is about possibility. It might be that Angela totally heard this, but there's no urgency for her to get her two girls that part-time opportunity. And so now it's about saying, how do we enroll her in the immediacy of the opportunity? Where is the possibility of we have an immediate opportunity that you want to take immediate advantage of, that you connect it to an immediacy for her, that linking possibility? Because she might have the whole part of it up into the and now matters.
And how would that immediacy manifest itself? Let's say that Robin's right, and your messaging was perfect in terms of that, but the urgency, how would that display itself for you to realize that there was urgency or there wasn't urgency?
I didn't ask enough questions. I didn't find out.
You're not listening to the question.
Hear it again. Listen.
What would happen? What action would she make that tells you, yes, she's in alignment with understanding that this is an opportunity, but it's an immediacy, it's an urgency issue? What action would happen or not happen that would give you that feedback?
An action from her.
Mhm.
She would tell me.
Or do.
Or do. Or not do.
What would be evidence that she got everything but is missing urgency?
What if she did have urgency?
She would have shown up.
What if she couldn't have showed up? That there was a legitimate thing, Robin said, she got it, just something came up, and she couldn't show up, and yet she saw it as valuable and there was urgency.
I'm missing something.
Okay.
I'm not gonna.
Hey, what happened? Oh my God, my daughters had CSUN. They started CSUN. I couldn't
They
get that. I couldn't get there. What's the next sentence?
If she sees the urgency.
When can we get together?
When's the next one?
When's the next one? Do we have to wait for a meeting? What can we get? Like what?
When can we get together this week?
Right?
Or when's the next one, right? Either of those. Like something of a when can I hear this? What's next? Was that part of the conversation from her? There's evidence, right? It's about us looking for those evidence pieces. And I don't know which it is, right? Now we have an opportunity to go back to figure that out and to enroll Angela, to enroll Angela in whatever possibility makes sense for her.
Sorry, I just realized something, so I want to ask you a question. And if we realize that we do it, because I know only Tony and David do it, I never do this, but since I've realized that Tony and David do it, and if we realize that we do it ourselves, then we won't get frustrated when we're talking to someone else and we can't get them to see it right away. Because if we can't get ourselves, if we know that we've had problems getting ourselves to see it immediately, then we will give another person a break versus if we're like, oh, I've always done this whole time, I'm so smart, and I have this, why don't you have it? But if you're like, oh, I know it, this is a skill that has to be learned, you can suck at it, and it takes time, so it's taken me a long time. So I'll probably forget it immediately once I walk out of here today, right? I don't have to relearn it. But then we can give other people a break, because once we accept that about ourselves, then of course you're not going to do it right away. Then it gives us perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it makes it easier when we're talking to them because then we don't create a resistance if something's not getting what, if someone's not getting what we're saying, then we don't have a resistance because we're like totally understand. Totally get it. Let's try a different way.
And people feel that vibration.
Immediately.
But so I'm gonna interject here because that's a slippery slope.
Yes.
So yes, and the moment you operate from the they don't get it, the 71-year-old just didn't get it.
Right.
No, it was actually the delivery. So this is where just the cognitive awareness.
They're not getting it. It's my fault they're not getting it because the responsibility relies on the communicator. So I can't get frustrated with them because I'm not good at this yet. I have to get better at it. It's not them, it's me.
Yes.
But I'm saying, but the frustration part is if someone doesn't get it, it could be either, it could be both. It doesn't matter. I still have to get better at to make them to get it.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, you're an idiot. They're never going to get it. They're just
Right.
going to put them in it's the 1 degree more intense. You keep working on them. I have to get better. I have to get better. I have to get better. But the frustration doesn't come up because why aren't you getting this? Because not everybody gets it because it's a skill, and I am still working on it. So yeah, it makes sense.
And it's what are you enrolling them in every time you talk to them?
Right.
Anywhere they are on the lineup, you are enrolling. The beauty of this skill is you get to practice it other than when you're sleeping. And in your sleep, you get to enroll yourself in your dreams.
Yeah.
Like it is what we do all day, every day. We enroll our spouses, we enroll our kids, we enroll our partners, we enroll our friends.
It's our core skill.
It
It
is.
is our base core skill.
And so we will continue to break it down and we will be experts at it because it will be, right? We have a couple life-changing things in here. MIC is life-changing. Wide is life-changing. All is the next life-changing skill in this room.
But for every skill, we have to enroll everyone into it. So the base core skill.
It is the base core.
Yeah, there is no lowers. There's no.
You have to be able to organize the skill in order to embrace.
Yeah.
And then you have to be able to know which one to delete.
And then, do it then. This is it. This is the base core skill. Do it then. Do it then. And then, do it then. This is it, Mike. This is what Miley. This is what I'm learning.
Eggos?
Do it. Do it then.
So yeah, so that is the message for tonight. It is all about
Access. Woo!
Oh, who's that?